you, as you had just said to our audience, you just kind of said, you just kind of saw the writing on the wall. Is that correct?
I think you're right. I really enjoyed sales, and it was financially was good to me. That's why I enjoyed sales, because you have the potential to make more and get paid what you're worth. But changes in the industry, it was a traditional industry. I appreciated the opportunity, but when you just have a kind of, I guess, an intuition or a gut. Something was telling me, and part of it I have to give credit to Gary Vaynerchuk's Crush It. Read that book, even though it's from '08, '09. You read that book, you want to get a brand going online and jump into the online world. So, I'm pretty adaptable to change, and thought, you know what, I might as well take a shot. But I had some great coworkers and a great boss over at my other place, but I just knew it was time to jump and cut the cord and go out on my own.
Yeah, epic. So, was there something that, because I'm sure there's a lot of people like you listening and watching to us at this point where they're successful and they're learning from you because they're here to hear from experts, and they're starting to question, going, well, wait a minute, things are successful for me. Should I start to change? Can you remember, was there anything during that phase that gave you a signal, or made you even start to consider something else?
Yeah, about a year ago, there wouldn't have even been the possibility that I would have left that job, which came about pretty quick. But what happened, to be quite honest, was significant changes to the compensation plan. I really, if there's and that's, I understand that in the corporate world, you're at the mercy of the corporation. They're trying to make themselves as lean as possible. But when there's changes, and I'm pretty good at math, I could do the math, and when I could see the changes coming, it probably would have been a hit to about 40% of my gross, which at that point I figured that's a kind of a catalyst to push me out. But no, I wasn't looking to change at all until those changes got announced, and that kind of gave me that push that I really, I guess, needed to look to do something different. And I decided to hedge my bets on myself.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You also talked about you talked about one of your comments was that um, you were doing personal growth and personal development all day anyway, and now you're kind of getting paid to do it. So when you
Yeah.
were a success, one of the qualities of you being successful was to continually investing in yourself, and continuing to grow and develop yourself, your skills personally and professionally, right?
You're absolutely right, and that's something probably the last 10 years that I've done daily reading. And I think you've probably heard Think and Grow Rich a million times across your journeys, but that's a book that my brother introduced to me. And there's so many books I can't even really probably cut it down to a list of 10 by mentioning Gary Vaynerchuk's. There's some great books on the best. I think the best book I could recommend to anyone is Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson, for a
Yeah.
change. That after you read that book, it just shows that whether it's a job, whether it's marriage or anything, the cheese could move at any time, and you have to be ready to adapt. So I'm kind of, like I said, I've been adaptable, and I've used kind of personal development's been big for me. I've always been big into the gym, and I think health and a positive, positive thinking goes a long way. And I'll be the first to admit, the last couple of months at my corporate job, I wasn't the same. I just, when the changes were announced, I just was dragging myself in. I didn't have that zest, and when you lose that, then I think it's time to make that move, and time to move on.
Yeah, and I think that's so interesting because really that's what leads us towards a turning point and leads us towards recognizing that there's a turning point when we start to lose that zest, and we start to lose that desire to do what we're doing. It's kind of, you're still successful, but you kind of know or feel that something is off, or just isn't right. Because for you, if I understand things correctly, you were always, before that, you were excited to go in. I mean, it was something that you enjoyed doing, something that you had fun doing, right?
Yeah, I was in the office early every morning, sometimes 7 o'clock, and I've always been the type, I don't mind answering my phone at night or doing work to look after a client. I took a lot of pride in the work I did, with all experiences, I take it. I really appreciate any experience I've ever had because it's always led or leads you right to the point you're at now. Who knows? Maybe I'd be a different person without the sales experiences that I learned in my last position, or the whole way through. I guess you're always picking up different things that help you develop, and I think it's important. One quote that always stuck with me, and I don't know if this is word for word, but Jack Canfield's "Everything you've ever wanted is on the other side of fear," I think is how it goes. And I always thought about that. Fear is almost this wall. If you could just somehow look over it, look around it, whatever, make the leap, and you'll land on your feet. I haven't starved yet. I take life not so serious, and going back to the Who Moved My Cheese book, you have to look at life is always changing, and you do have to be able to adapt.
Yeah, I mean, life is going to change whether we like it or not, and things are going to change around us whether we like it or not. And like you said, you have to adapt. So
Mhm.
before we get into and really dig into the turnaround, because what I'd like to do in a moment is dig into that turnaround and go through some of the feelings and some of the things you started to do and some of the actions you took and kind of how you prepared yourself for success. From the beginning, was there any is there any big moment or aha or anything that comes to you from your time before your turnaround that you'd want to share with the audience?
I think looking back at it now, I remember when those changes were announced by the corporation, you feel a little bit resentful, and I think the biggest thing to remember now, looking back on it, is to say, hey, look, everything does happen for a reason. So it just goes back to being adaptable, but be ready to change. And I think that aha moment was, you know what, I'm nobody owes me a good living for the rest of my life. And if you're going to rely on other people or companies, then you have to expect that some changes are going to happen. And I don't want to knock the 9 to 5 because I've done it for a number of years after university. But I think just for myself personally, I realized that I wanted to strike out on my own. It was something that was always kind of there, but then there's always that fear, oh, I'm not going to get my paycheck every 2 weeks and things like that. And it's not for everybody. I wouldn't recommend entrepreneurship sometimes for the faint of heart, but I think if you're willing to work and you're willing to keep a positive attitude and treat people right, things will work out well. So I think the aha moment really is just what we've been talking about. I think realizing, like, when that what, nobody owes me anything, and what, I did enjoyed the position for a couple of years, but things are kind of constantly changing, and forces are moving. They've pushed me to kind of get into podcasting and get into something that's a really, really cool industry and a niche, and something that, as you know, that's on the upwards trend now. And I thought now was a good time to get kind of on the wave. And who knows, maybe I'll start up my own show. It's someday, but it's addictive just listening to it and seeing what people are doing. It really is.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting because that leads us into, of course, the turning point. And
to watch the rest of this epic episode now, click on the link below the video. Do it now, you'll be glad you did. Are you still here? What are you waiting for? Watch the rest of this epic episode now by clicking on the link below the video.